Hello, friends, fans, and dairy products of all ages. This is Cheese of Ages, and as you can tell from the text beneath my handsome visage, I am going to be doing one final video of the DnD Next Playtest review series. I've been doing it for quite a while. This is the last one that will ever be posted on the channel, but when DnD Next comes out, once I get my hands on it, I will be reviewing that. This is just a final kind of closer video for the series, talking about some just various things, rattling on, just kind of putting all of my thoughts in a nutshell. All in all, just let me start with saying that the game in its current form is okay. It works. I know the last 5-6 videos I've put out is just mainly me complaining a lot, nitpicking it to hell, and just like apparently getting very upset about design mechanics or design philosophies, according to the last video. But the game itself, aside from those nitpicks, is solid and works, and I do understand that this is just the nitty-gritty. This is what everything will plug into. I get that. I understand that. And if you look at the playtest materials with that perspective in mind, it's okay. There are still some nagging details that I've mentioned in previous videos that really need to be fixed. For instance, that whole... I know it's not actually a problem, but how the formatting is with that AC armor bonus chart. Now, the meaning is clear, but its writing is just poorly edited. It doesn't clearly state that it does the math for you. Therefore, if you look at it and you're an idiot, which there are so many idiots in the world that would make this mistake, believe me, you could either add too much armor to yourself because the chart doesn't nothing gives you any indication that it's doing the math for you. Nothing that I've been able to find indicates that it's doing the math for you. And if you don't take into account that it's doing the math for you, the chart is implicitly saying that the armor is giving you that 10, even though that armor is not giving you that 10. Which makes that 10 no longer you moving around, it makes it armor. And the meaning is clear. It's doing the math for you. I know that. It's just poorly edited. It's just kind of weird. It needs to be fixed, like one sentence of some fashion, to clarify that for the stupid people. And also, the design mentality thing that I went over in my last thing, and the whole representing the skillful classes by giving them a +5 to it is still stupid and still hasn't been fixed. Why give them the entire skill progression immediately? I know that after second glances and looking at things, most NPCs with skill sets would have the same ability, would still have the same +5. But it still is too much of a leap. Like, just because this guy's a rogue, he doesn't even have to try to be better at this skill than people whose classes is built around the gimmick. He just is better at it than them automatically. A rogue that for some reason has no dexterity modifier and picks stealth for one of his +5 getting skills is going to be immediately twice as good at stealth as a ranger with a maxed out dexterity and a racial bonus to it that the rogue doesn't have, and also a proficiency in it. You know, somebody who's built for it. A ranger, a stealth-oriented ranger, stealthy woodsman ambusher, is going to be automatically vastly inferior to a rogue that is not a stealthy rogue, that is not built to it. I mean, that's kind of a silly example, but that can be used for any skill whatsoever, so it applies to every situation. It's especially cumbersome in the sense of the bard, and in the sense that he can automatically can't roll any lower than a 10 on knowledge skills because of his bardic knowledge thing. All he has to do is select one of his free +5s to go into one knowledge skill, and he's automatically astronomically superior to classes whose entire thing is being built around that knowledge. Like the druid, even if he builds himself to knowledge and the bard has no intelligence modifier, the druid's still vastly inferior. The wizard, whose entire ability score array is built to have maximum intelligence, who is a race that has a racial bonus that gives him advantage on knowledge checks where he gets to roll his die twice, and who has the proficiency in that skill, is still gonna be vastly inferior to a bard with no intelligence modifier and bardic knowledge and his free +5 to that. That needs work. That's stupid. If every single thing in the world aside from being a bard can be applied and it not make you anywhere near as good as the bard, or it still makes you inferior to the bard a large majority of the time, because even though you can roll twice, you can still roll below 10, you got a problem in design. And the whole fact that the priority list and influence on your capabilities places race higher than background by 2 whole places on the priority list is silly as well. I've said this in the comment section of the previous video, but it basically racial bonuses. The only ones that currently exist are a advantage on knowledge checks and a ability to hide in less obscured terrain as possible, and also a advantage on the technology related checks that the gnome gets, which automatically, considering background, all background gives you immediately out of the gate is a +1 to the skill, and depending on what the skill is, perhaps a toolkit benefit. Yeah, I'd say that those racial benefits vastly outweigh the background benefits. Vastly. Yeah. Why should being born into something give you a superior bonus to something than a lifetime of practice? Your background, depending on race, let's just use human as an example. Human background, the span of time in a character's life that is encompassed by his background is his birth up to the time he became an adventurer, which is about like 16 to 21 years. So the moment of birth, just being born, gives you a more significant boost than 16 to 21 years of life. What does that make sense? Where does that make any sense? That's just silly. I mean, mechanically, it works. But this just goes into the neck of the woods where if background isn't mechanically designed, where it carries as much importance to your character as it does from a roleplay perspective, then clearly roleplay and mechanics are divorced from each other. If background is such a mechanically lower down on the list thing than just what you're born as, you're not designed it right. You need to retweak that. Background needs to be reworked to be more important. It needs to be a larger influence. Right now it's very small. So, another nitpick along these same lines. Why does the gnome race give you a toolbox? I didn't actually bother noting this before, but they put the gnome in there, and one of his gnome racial traits is he has a toolkit, and he tinkers with gadgets. He can like make little tinker toys that are kind of useless but are like cantrip powerful kind of things. Why is every gnome born with a toolkit and the ability to make small trinkets? regardless of what their background is. Why is that clearly, intrinsically background-oriented thing in race? Is every gnome born? Do they come out of their mother's womb with a toolbox? If not, why is it in race? Am I gonna go into a gnome city, walk into the slums full of homeless gnomes on the street, and every single one of them will have a toolbox and be working on a Clockwork Mouse toy? It doesn't make sense. Why does a gnome get a toolbox as part of his race? It's just fucking stupid. I must now command you to picture gnomes being born wearing tool belts, because that's apparently canon in D&D now. But yeah, all in all, aside from the clearly divorced from common sense in roleplay design and lore and fluff, being so clearly vastly divorced from game mechanics, and such a vastly skewed perspective on proper design, all in all the game works okay, mechanically speaking, but yeah, gnomes coming out of their mommies with tool belts. That's the kind of environment this design team is creating. And this is the last playtest packet. This is going to get fixed in the playtest. The playtest is going to be over and by the end of the week. That's why I'm making this video. The playtest is over, and they're not getting any more feedback. They're clearly not listening to me. If in the final version these problems are still there, I will seriously be very annoyed. And its current form, it will seriously depend on the rules modules that can be inserted, whether I will bother with this edition or not. Right now, it's intrinsically 3.5 without all the problems mechanically 3.5 had, with some aspects of 2nd edition and some aspects of 4th. It's basically, here, we stripped it down to basically a workable core and make your own D&D, because we're sick of your bitching about 4th edition. Now, mind you, 4th edition had problems that I've previously noted. Pretty much almost as many as 3.5 had. It wasn't quite as min-maxy, but had its min-maxiness. And powers were as much of a design problem as base attack bonus was in 3.5. Base attack bonus causing several issues with accuracy being linked to speed, which doesn't make any sense. So like a precise but slow character had to be less accurate, because like the rogue, his entire gimmick is based on precision strikes to do massive damage, but he was the least he had the 2nd least accuracy progression in the entire game. From his base attack bonus. Didn't make any sense at all. Created so many nonsense problems with that whole thing, with accuracy being linked to speed. But yeah, that's not in D&D Next, because they got rid of multiple attack progression. They just incorporated that into class abilities. But yeah, it will significantly depend on rules modules and what the final product looks like before I will decide whether or not I bother with this edition even remotely. I mean, right now it's very constrained, very few options in the core thing. Very, very little character customization, even less than people alleged was in 4th edition when it first came out, and to an extent were somewhat right. It's even less customization. But yeah, all in all, I'd rate the playtest materials 5.5 out of 10. Functional, but not really much else. Keep in mind, I would have ranked like earlier versions a little higher, like 6, maybe 7. But the current form is just kind of functional, but clearly divorced from roleplay, and skewed to all hell, and kind of lazy and uninspired, honestly speaking. But anyway, this is going to be Cheese of Ages, signing off.